Hello and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Friday the 24th of March. Today I'm trying to stick to my funny Fridays, so I'm going to talk about a giggling God, a laughing Lord, and a joyous Jehovah in just a minute. But I want to just comment on yesterday's video. I talked about appropriation of culture and appreciation or sharing of culture, and somebody in the comments picked up on that appreciation of culture, and I really like that. But I seem to have stepped on a few nerves, and that's okay. You see, I don't make these videos because I want everyone to think exactly the way I do. I'd like to stimulate conversation, and I like to be challenged to think about things from a different perspective. And the only way I know how to do that is to expose myself to other people's perspectives. And while I appreciate all the comments that came in, those who are arguing with me, those who are charging up against me, those who are teaching me new things, and those people who agree with me, well, I appreciate all those things. I want just to remind everybody that at no point do I believe that I talked about any specific. I might have talked about like the Irish culture as an example. But what I would really like to highlight is the fact that I think we all have to take a look at our own cultures and figure out what does that constitute. Because somebody mentioned, that they're from a Scottish and an Irish background and they worship these gods and things like that. That's my background too. I have a little bit of German, I have English, I have Scottish. I don't know if I have Irish. But the fact is that for whatever reasons, my ancestors did not pass on to me those parts of what had been their culture, and hence they aren't a part of mine. And if I had children, I would need to make it a point of being able to think about what is it that I'm passing on to my children, because that wasn't a big thing in my family. These are the traditions of our family. We really didn't have any. So we sort of were melded by the culture around us. And I'm okay with that. I love being who I am and being part of a Canadian culture that exposes me to so many different things, some of which really resonate with me and I feel very much at home with, and other things that make me think. Other things I think, that doesn't feel right for me, so I'm not gonna pursue that. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for sharing your perspective, and remember that you only, at the end of the day, have the right to own your own perspective. I'm not trying to change anybody else's opinions. I'm simply trying to expand my own and understand things and maybe suggest some things that maybe some people haven't thought about, or a different way of thinking about things. It's all good. You do you. I really don't like that phrase, you do you, I'll do me, but that's what it really comes down to. So for those of you who were really put off by my video yesterday, I don't apologize for putting you off. I do feel bad if you felt angry or hurt, or that I missed the point or I missed the boat. But I don't believe at any time in any of my videos I have said absolutely that this is what you must believe. And because I don't think that's my place. I don't believe it's my place to do that. So there you go from yesterday. But today it's Friday Friday, and we're getting ready for a weekend. We're 2 weeks away from Easter, and we're heading into the busiest time of my year as a priest. And I'm not sure that next week will be Funny Friday. And I guarantee you that 2 weeks from today won't be, because it's Good Friday, which is not a happy day in the church. And I will do something for Good Friday. So today is indeed Funny Friday. And I'd like to introduce you, if you haven't already heard, about an author named, his name is Andrew M. Greeley. Now, if you like murder mysteries, you probably would really appreciate reading Andrew Greeley's stuff. But he was an American-Irish Roman Catholic priest. He is since deceased. And he wrote dozens of books. Some of them were murder mysteries, where it was a Roman Catholic priest who solved these mysteries in and around Chicago. I believe most of his work took place in Chicago, in the U.S. And he also wrote a significant number of books that were more about Ireland and the Irish and things like that. And he delves into the Roman Catholic faith, and he delves into the Irish traditions and culture. But he's got a very particular writing style that may not be everybody's cup of tea. And it took me a long time reading him to understand the way things go. But he wrote this book. It's more like a novella. It's very short. Home for Christmas. And in it, there is a young man it's a bit of a love story, and it's quite beautiful. But it's a love story between a man and a woman. a boy and a girl, a man and a woman. And it's also a love story about God. And in it, Petey Kane, Captain Peter Kane, is in battle in Iraq, and he's wounded by a, a, a bomber. What do they call themselves when they blow themselves up? Anyway, he's wounded by a suicide bomber, and he dies. For 9.5 minutes, he flatlines, and then he comes back, and he believes that he has been to heaven. He believes that he has met the one, informally called the one, formally called the one in three. And this conversation he has with God, the one, is hilarious, and it's profound, and it's funny, and it's very much in the Andrew Greeley style. It's tongue in cheek, but also profoundly, profoundly beautiful. And so I got thinking about that. How do we think about God? We had this incredible conversation on Wednesday in my book study group in Wainwright. We were talking about the afterlife and God and this image of God, and some people, thinking about God with a long white beard sitting in a big throne in heaven or up in the clouds. Sometimes I talk about God in his holy high chair, things like that. And earlier this week, I spoke with someone, had a beautiful conversation with someone who, from a very, very clear and powerful place in her heart, refers to God as she. And that doesn't take me aback, because if we can refer to God as he, why can we not refer to God as she? It might take some mind wrapping for some people, but we're not supposed to anthropomorphize God in the first place. We're not supposed to make God look like us. And yet we have, for generations and generations, we have treated God and thought about God as if God was one of us. Do you remember that song? I think it was Amanda Marshall. Well, what if God was one of us, sitting on the bus? Well, I don't think it's a bad thing that we anthropomorphize God, because it's our way of understanding God. And how do we try to understand something in ways that we can't understand? We can't. So we think about God in terms that make sense to us, and our physical bodies and genders and things like that make sense to us for the most part. So we tend to think about God in terms of that idea of God as person. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, really, if we get stuck there. But if that's just the way that you put language, how you articulate this being, this divine presence, then that's okay, if that's how you're comfortable. But I think sometimes we do ourselves I can't think of the word today. Like, we do ourselves a disservice when we think about God as being, human, but then even more so when we make God have those, we think of God as being harsh or judgmental. We think of God as being, maybe we even think of God as being gentle and caring. But how often do we think about God being silly? How often do we think about God laughing till God's teeth might fall out? Or, as the kids say, laughing so hard he pees his pants. How often do we think about God giggling? Giggling God, a laughing Lord, a joyous Jehovah. Think about it. We believe, at least I believe, I'll speak from the personal. Okay, I believe that God created everything, and including all of the emotions that I feel. That sense of awe when I see a sunset or a sunrise that God created. I can't imagine that God looked at that and said, yeah, there you go, day's work done. I think that God probably looks at a sunset or a sunrise and harkens back to that first one when God said that it was good. I think that God probably looks at God's sunrises and says, hey, that's a pretty great start for the day, isn't it? That's beautiful. And God created laughter. How can you see a little child, like those babies when they get old enough that when you tickle them, they laugh, or even better, when you come at them and pretend you're going to tickle them, they have that anticipatory giggling. They start to giggle before you even get to them. If God created giggling, why wouldn't we believe that God giggles? I love that idea of, knock-knock jokes. I can't even imagine what the greatest knock-knock joke would be. God would be like, oh no, don't tell me again, I'm hurting my sides. What is wrong with thinking? Like, we recognize on Good Friday that God God knew the pain of his son dying on the cross, the angst of that separation. When Jesus says, my God, why have you forsaken me? We have no problem really going to that place of thinking how hard it must have been for God to go through that. But how often do we, on the flip side, go to that place where God just scoops everybody up and gives them a big hug and they all have a belly chuckle? What's wrong with that? Absolutely nothing. If God created love, then God loves. If God created healing and joy and peace, then God experiences healing and joy and peace. If God created laughter, gut giggles, belly laughs, then how can we ever believe that God doesn't share in those too? I really, really do think that if we tell a really good joke here on earth, then God must be giggling away in heaven. And can you just imagine all of the jokes that we have no heavenly way of knowing until we get there? I really do believe that God has a sense of humor. After all, look at some of the animals that God created. The long neck of the giraffe, the trunk of an elephant, the armadillo, the puffin, the penguin, chihuahuas, fuzzy, this is my personal favorite. I'm sorry if you really love those cats that look like they're bare naked, but those cats that look like they have no hair, the hairless cats, they are funny looking. And God created them. I think God has a sense of humor. So however you go about your weekend, I really hope that you find times when you recognize that you are laughing with the Lord, you are giggling with God, and you are rejoicing with a joyous Jehovah. God bless you. I will see you on Sunday for Church at Home, or for Gospel on the Go, and on Monday for Church at Home with Rachel. And if you're still ticked at me about Thursday's post, please forgive me. Have a great day, and God bless, and don't forget to laugh.